Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, please help me to welcome our new guest speakers from Japan, Dr. Winnie and Dr. Christopher. Today, they will be presenting about defining mentor in an English for specific purposes, project-based learning classroom context. So, this is your floor. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If it's in the evening where you are, it's about 7 o'clock in the evening where I am, where myself and Christopher are. So we're going to start with our presentation. I'll go first, and then my colleague Christopher will finish up and do the second half. And we're going to be talking about, as it says here, how we defined a mentor relationship in our project-based learning class here in Japan. So Chris, if you go to the next slide. And these are this is an overview of what we're going to be talking about, how we define mentor relationship, and then get to our conclusion. Next. So this is our main question. Who is involved with this PBL in English course and what are their roles? So we have some actors on the screen, language instructors, students, content instructors, and administrators. And we wanted to know mentors, facilitators, who are they? And what were the relationships between these actors? Next. Yep, next slide. There we go. And just before it starts, so I'll talk a little bit about the inspiration behind our class, our project-based learning class, that's PBL, and some of the theory, et cetera, that kind of undergirded our class. And one thing was MEXT, our Ministry of Education in Japan, was very, very important. And a particular article that talked about communicative engineering. And if you go to the next slide, these particular principles are the ones that kind of undergirded our project-based learning class. You can see they're from 2006, but we did a lot of literature review and they're pretty much consistent from 2006 up until now in terms of what are the main characteristics of project-based learning. And you can see everything from building teams of students to applying integrated knowledge, not really acquiring knowledge in terms of being able to spit it back on a test, but really being able to apply knowledge in what we had in terms of making a project and then giving a presentation. Next. And this is the context that we were in. We were saying before that we're coming from Japan, specifically Fukui, and our class was here at the University of Fukui, a national university. And we specifically were teaching engineering students. You can see the second, it says 3 faculties, the second one down, engineering faculties. We specifically were dealing with engineering students. Next slide. And our class specifically, as it says here, 24 students, so 12 architecture students and 12 mechanical engineering students. Architecture is one of the faculties, mechanical engineering is one of the faculties in the broader engineering department. And we had these students, we chose them based on their TOEIC scores because that's the test that we were using in terms of English proficiency. So we chose the top 12 architecture students and top 12 mechanical engineering students, and we put them together. And we did 3 projects. As you can see there, bridge, lamp, eyewear, and 3 presentations, and we met twice a week. Next, Chris. And this just shows you kind of a picture of how we divided up a 15-week semester, so about 5 weeks for each project. Bridge, lighting fixture, and designing eyewear were our main projects. Next. And this little graph here, this little figure here kind of shows a little bit about how the collaboration went, the kind of where the actors were. Like I said, we focused on engineering, so medical and education weren't really under our purview, but we focused on engineering. And you can see in the center there, the little box that says Language Center. Chris and I belong to the Language Center. That's where we did all the English language classes, the 1st and 2nd year students. And we really had to work with the administration in order to get this whole program running, this project-based learning program running. And then we also obviously had to work with the engineering department because we actually worked with engineering teachers in order to administer our class. So over the course of one semester, we collaborated with 4 engineering teachers. And those engineering teachers had to also deal with administration, and those engineering teachers helped us by contacting local companies, and they were the kind of go-between between the local companies. So there was a lot of collaboration on different levels going on. Next. And you can see here the process, the collaborative process timeline that we laid out. And this is just a very broad view of a 30,000-foot view of the timeline process from when we first started it all the way even up to now, our reflection process and you know, what was happening in between. So every step of the way, there are a lot more details. This could be a lot more messy, but this gives you kind of the broad outlook of what our timeline was. Next slide, Chris. And one of the big things, and this is kind of what we really want to get to now, is going to start our discussion about the collaboration and kind of setting up how we talk about relationships within our project-based learning class. Okay, so these are some keys, what we thought were interdepartmental collaboration, really big keys to that. And these came out of interviews we did with the engineering teachers, as well as even between ourselves, that we did interviews when we were kind of reflecting and trying to collect data about the class. And you can see these 4: cross-discipline inquiry, pedagogy adjustment, administrative support, like-mindedness. These were the big concepts that came out of our interview sessions. Next. And you can see here 2 engineering and English professors, how we said cross-discipline inquiry. Basically, we were interested in each other's disciplines, right? We should put in more concrete language building drills for giving English presentation, said an engineering professor. Very interesting, the engineering professor said that. They were really focused on getting in the English, right? And then focusing on the basic forces of bridges would help the students understand fundamental concepts of engineering better. Us as English teachers, we wanted to know, what do they know about bridges? Do they understand these words that they need to understand? So maybe we need to know more about just the basic forces, the basic construction of a bridge. That's a very engineering thing. That has nothing to do with English necessarily, but if we understand that, maybe we can help teach the English better. The next slide. So pedagogy adjustment. You know, yeah, adjusting how we learn, right? So the presentations were good, but there was too much Japanese being used, said an engineering professor. And then the students should speak more English in group exercise, said another engineering professor. So we really wanted to change kind of the learning of the students and kind of how we were engaging that learning with the students. And it was the engineering professors that actually said, get them speaking more English. And we actually made adjustments about that as well in how we got them speaking more English by doing small group presentations at the end of every class. Is just one example that we did to kind of change getting them to speak more English. Next. Administrative support. Yes, if you don't have administrative support, I think most university situations it would be impossible, said an English professor. The other one said at certain universities, it certainly cannot be done. The departments are too segregated. This is a big thing. And probably you're seeing through this conference that without administrative support, in many ways, a lot of things don't really get done. Mentor programs, all reform programs, they can all look great on paper, but really it takes good administrators and people who understand policy in order to really get things done. That's a big piece. Teachers, that's a big piece, but also the administrators are a big piece. And thankfully, we had good relationships with our administrators, and then we were able to get this done. We really praised them a lot for a lot of the things that they had to do, even though sometimes it was just dealing with finances, etc. But they really, really, really helped make sure our program ran very smoothly. Otherwise, it would never have gotten done. Next. And like-mindedness. So this is where, you know, yeah, the teachers kind of have to sort of think a little bit the same, right? So one engineering professor said, I personally wanted to have a PBL in English class. I was wondering if I could do it myself. So I was really willing to help. And the other teacher said, some teachers do not like speaking English, so maybe they don't want to participate in this kind of class. When they say some teachers, they're talking about the Japanese engineering teachers. Even though they can speak English, some really don't want to speak English for whatever reason. Maybe they don't feel confident in their English, but these two professors really wanted to do this kind of PBL in English class to help the students for their professional gain later on. And that was really something that we both clicked about. Obviously, as English language teachers, we're teaching English. So the like-mindedness there really helped us connect and kind of really propel the class. So that's all for me for right now. My colleague will take over and do the second half of the presentation where we delve in a little deeper about our relationships with the teachers and students, etc. Take it away, Chris.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Wayne, for that. It's good to talk to you all. Hello from Japan, where it's very, very cold. I'm sure it's very warm in Cambodia, so we're a little jealous of you. I want to take this right back to where we started. Who is involved with this PBL in English course and what are their roles? And as you can tell, we've been doing this course in some way for about 7 years now, or at least thinking about it. And the main actors, the main stakeholders in the class that we can identify are us as language instructors, the professors, the engineering professors as content instructors, the administrators who help us to develop the class from that level, and then of course the students themselves. And I've put the students last, but actually the students should be first, and they're in the center. No matter how we see these relationships, they are in the center of this actual connection between all these people here. But we had a question. We've always had this question, not necessarily about the mentors part, but who were we? What was our relationship with the students? What was our relationship with the other actors? Mentors, facilitators. Mentors came a little bit later. Facilitators, though, we've always been thinking of ourselves as facilitators, actually. And right from the get-go, we had an idea with the Hemlo-Silver and DeSimone's definition of a facilitator. Just as they did work in actual problem-based learning, which is quite connected to project-based learning. But we took their definition here. Expert learners, this is a facilitator. Facilitators are expert learners modeling good strategies for learning and thinking rather than providing content knowledge, okay? Now, if we take this definition and first apply it to this particular set here, we can already see, I think, that language instructors are a facilitator for students. We are expert learners who model good strategies for learning and thinking rather than providing content knowledge. Now, it says content knowledge here. This automatically excludes, in some ways, content instructors from this definition. So what are content instructors to the students? At the same time, what are administrators to the students? And then even beyond that, we can look at these relationships. What are the relationships between everybody outside of the students, actually? And so this is what we wanted to investigate a little bit here. Now, we're not going to talk about all of these different relationships, but we hope to shed some light to understand some of these relationships that we have here. Now, in order to do this, as I said, Wayne and I started off with the idea of facilitator, but as we're asking the question, what are content instructors or to the students? What are the administrators? We started looking at different models as well. And this is where we sort of started thinking about the idea of mentoring as well to add into this. And in our looking at the literature review, we found this one particularly interesting article by Dawson in 2014, who tries to define mentoring relationships through 16 mentoring design elements. And these design elements are based not just on Dawson's ideas, but Dawson's article is almost a literature review itself. And they looked at the actual different literature over 20, 30 years, trying to understand what mentoring is. And they took parts of different definitions in order to create these 16 mentoring design elements. And we want to try to use these to help define a couple of the relationships that are on the graph, the figure that we just showed. Now, particularly, there's 16 elements here, but some of them I think we can skip. Selection, some of them are ones that aren't really necessary for us to understand what we're talking about today. But the ones that we do want to focus on are first the objectives, then the roles, the tie strength, relative seniority, matching, and activities. However, we don't want to do that actually in that order, because we went about a different order since we didn't look at this class in any kind of mentoring relationship until after the class had really finished over 3 years. So going back to our original figure here, again, we have here, we understand facilitator relationship between language instructors and students. Now, if we take these six different ideas, objectives, the aims or intentions of the mentoring model. Now, this is kind of a post revelation after the class, but we kind of thought about content instructors and what they were doing, and we started thinking of them maybe as a mentor. Why? Because some of the roles they had, right? A statement of who is involved in their function and the activities they had, particularly this one was interesting for us. The actions that mentors and mentees can perform during their relationship. Now the students, these aren't English students. They're not studying to be English teachers. They're not studying to be English instructors. They're studying to be engineers, right? So one reason why we don't view language instructors and students as a mentor relationship is because these Japanese students who want to be engineers don't have the similar background to what we have. Wayne is from America, I'm from America, we teach language. This is not anywhere in the student's future at all. However, the content instructors, i.e. the engineering professors, these are actual professors who build bridges, who build lighting design things. They're professors who actually go out in the field and do things. And these are the actual people these students want to be in the future. They have similar backgrounds. They're Japanese. They want to be these kinds of engineers in the futures. So the activities that they can actually engage in are much more similar to what the content instructors actually provide. Added to this is the next item, relative seniority. These content instructors, they've been in the field for 15, 20, 30 years actually, and they know exactly what it takes to be an engineer in Japanese society. So again, more of the student's background is reflected in the actual engineering professor's background. Matching how mentoring relationships are proposed. Again, some of the students are architecture students, we got architecture engineers. Some of the students are mechanical engineering students, we got mechanical engineering engineers to help us out with this project. Now the tie strength, this is where our biggest hiccup on why this might not be a mentor, because mentor in our idea was something that has a long-lasting, months, years relationship, lifetime relationship possibly. The previous presentation almost had that sort of feel where it's a long time. This is 1 semester or so. However, saying that, even though the tie strength is not so strong in that particular semester, in the sense that they're not always meeting, these students in Japan, eventually they will have to do their graduation thesis. And a lot of times they'll keep taking, once they know these content instructors, the engineering professors, they will take their class, and maybe 3rd year, they will actually join their seminar class in order to work with them for their final thesis actually. And then after that, we know students who have worked with these, who have had these sorts of relationships and then gone on, gotten jobs through these professors as well. So the ties can strengthen even over time within the university atmosphere. So we view this, the content instructors, based on these ideas as a mentor relationship, as opposed to us with the students as a facilitator relationship. Now, even beyond that, we actually almost view ourselves as mentors to the content instructors. Why? Because the engineering professors, well, we all have the same goal. We want the students to understand engineering concepts in English. But one of the base things was the engineering concepts, right? And we needed the professors for that. However, the engineering professors, they have no idea how to teach language at all. So when they walk into a language classroom, even a PBL, project-based learning classroom, they often don't have the knowledge in how to help the students get their language skills in engineering better. And through that, they would ask us, we realized this over time, actually. This wasn't something we understood at first. Over time, we understood that the teachers, these professors, would ask us questions. What should I do with the students? How can I talk to them so that they are able to try to speak English better and such? And we would give them ideas and tips to do in class, even though we would be in class together, we would give them ideas and tips so that they could be better language instructors, giving their engineering content knowledge as well. And so in this way, we almost understand ourselves, the language instructors, as mentors to the content instructors with regards to language education. We took our expertise knowledge and gave it to them the same way they gave their expertise knowledge to the students. Now, what are the other ones? We had all these other relationships. Well, we're running out of time, so we're going to go ahead and say undefined. We're not going to try to talk about these. There's other ways we can look at these relationships. What are the relationships between the engineering professors and us? Everybody with the administrators never participated actively in the class, so we would never even approach the idea of mentor or even facilitator relationship. However, if we looked at a different theory, I think in order to fill in this figure, we're going to have to look at different theories, add a bunch of them together in order to understand all of the relationships going on. So as far as we have only about 10 minutes left, I want to go ahead and just end here in conclusion and leave a couple of ideas first. What we understand is essentially this right here, that language instructors towards students can be viewed as a facilitator relationship. Content instructors towards students in a PBL class can be a mentor type of relationship. And then language instructors towards the content instructors could be a type of mentor relationship. Some last three ideas. Project-based learning planning can be seen at a pure content level as a mini mentor relationship towards students. Meaning, again, the content instructors towards the students can be viewed as mentors as long as the students and content instructors' backgrounds are similar enough. Meaning, again, the students have an imaginary self that they want to be, and often that imaginary self is the same as the content instructor itself. This is not true for us as language instructors, but for architecture engineering students, they might want to be an architecture engineer in the future, right? Next, language teaching in PBL is best understood in a facilitator context, okay, where us, the language instructors, are facilitators. Again, we've talked about this, but it's almost the reverse of the same coin as number one. Finally, our main point, when multiple instructors divided by content and language in teaching occur, language instructors can take on mentor-like relationships towards the content-based colleagues to facilitate language learning in students. It's very specific, but this is a specific case that we have here where we have so much co-teaching. 2 language instructors, multiple engineering professors happening at the same time. And in that particular situation, we can help to understand what the relationships between language and content instructors are, besides what everybody's relationship to the student is. Okay, I want to go ahead and open up for questions there. I want to thank you for listening. I was Christopher Hennessy, and my partner in crime, as always, Wayne Malcolm. Here are some of our main references that we used for this particular presentation. We are happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We really appreciate for what you have just presented, especially about mentoring related to the engineering, right? Engineering. So we have got some questions from our audience. The first, let's go to Janti. The question is, could you please explain about pedagogy in adjustment in interdepartmental collaboration? Thank you.
Yeah, the pedagogy adjustment, that's basically just changing our lesson plan, changing our teaching plan based on feedback from various persons. In this case, we got feedback from students, and more particular, also we got feedback from the engineering teachers. So the engineering teachers, really, the ones we were working with, really wanted the students to speak more English during the class, so during their presentation, their English would be better. So in that regard, actually, Chris and I, our kind of pedagogy is using their L2 to help their L1. So we never really said we had a strict policy of only English in the classroom. We would say, hey, whatever works to help you get to the end result of a good presentation, you should do that. If that means sometimes talking with your L1, your Japanese, to understand some of these concepts, that's fine. You can do that, but just remember that your final presentation needs to be in English. The engineering teachers, on the other hand, were like, no, they shouldn't do that. If they're going to talk in Japanese, then they're only stopping themselves from learning the concepts in English because they're going to need to explain them in English. They can't be translating them on the fly when they're at their presentation. So they really were like, you should you should try to find some way of getting them to speak more English in class. And that resulted in a change in our teaching. At the end of every class, we did little mini progress reports, which were in English, 1 to 2 minutes in their groups, exchanging ideas. What did you do today? What was your main problem? How did you overcome it? What will you do the next day to carry on your progress? And we did that every class, a few minutes at the end of every class, all in English. And eventually students started speaking more and more and more English. And even actually, again, some of the engineering professors really came down on the students. I was like came down, but they really, yeah, they're really very direct in telling the Japanese students, hey, you need to speak more English. If you're gonna give a presentation like this in front of more people, you're gonna embarrass yourselves. You need to be better. And I think that was a great impact from the Japanese teachers because, like Chris was saying, those are who the students want to be. They want to be those teachers, or like they want to be those people. So it was very impactful from them. But that's an example of what we're talking about by pedagogy adjustment and interdisciplinary collaboration there.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. One more question from Kuntai. The first question is, do you expect that mentoring improve your classroom contacts effectively? Why? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the mentor relationship improves everything. Actually, we're still in contact with some of the engineering professors, and I wouldn't say I consider them like close friends, but we do keep in contact, and it's something that we look fondly back. So in terms of the classroom contacts and everything that's happening, and even some of the students, they still remember and they still talk fondly of those days, of those classes. So I think it was something where, oh, and even some of the students went on to be choose some of those professors as thesis advisors. So in our system, senior students have to do a thesis, and they get to choose an advisor. And some of the students chose the engineering professors as advisors for their senior thesis program. So yeah, I think it was a very successful mentoring classroom contact relationship.
And just to add on to that, again, the idea of mentoring, I think, is often a long-term or even lifetime sort of idea. But I think it can happen in smaller batches. And we've only started ourselves. Many people at this conference were very honored to be here because many people here have been doing this for a long time, and we've only started just dipping our toes into the water of the mentoring pool here. But one thing that we're discovering is there is this idea of flash mentoring and short-term mentoring that can be really beneficial as well, where you only have 1 or 2 chances. And in some ways, even if students didn't go on to be thesis advisees for these professors or have some longer-term relationship, I think, at least for the purposes of that class, if they even had 5 minutes with that professor to explain to them an engineering concept, it was very, very useful for them in their future academic career to take those ideas on. So even short-term mentoring relationships can be really, really important for learning, even lifelong learning for students actually as well.
I just saw a message here in the chat from Kat Sariat about what factors do we have to focus to ensure the PBL working well in the classroom. Can I answer that?
Okay, you have only 1 minute, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I just, very quickly. I think, Kat, one of the things is, and I answered this a little bit in the chat before, is, building collaboration and that kind of like-mindedness, getting on the same page. I think establishing that if you're working with other people in a PBL class, I think is very important. And also laying out your objectives very clearly to the learners, what they need to do and how the structure is going to work in your class. That's something that we really took seriously in giving them a concrete plan and then giving them documents and then kind of letting them go because they always had a structure to work in. I think that's very important when you set up a PBL classroom is really, yeah, giving them that kind of safe space to kind of then expand and do what they have to do. But yeah, giving them some clear direction on like what they need to do. Not over direction, but just kind of not micromanagement, but giving them that kind of framework of what they need to do.
Okay, thank you so much, doctors, for sharing a good topic and also for have a good explanation for those participants and questions. Now, because of time constraint, I would like to end here. And now, everyone,